I'm Shelley Rosenblum. Welcome to the Belkin Gallery. We are thrilled to have UBC Contemporary Players back. They come every semester, devising a program in conjunction with our exhibition, and we love your concerts.
Thank you for having us.
Thank you especially to you, Corey, and to Paolo. It's a pleasure to work with you. I hope you enjoy the concert.
Thank you so much. Thank you, everybody, for coming to the concert today. We're really excited to be here, and thank you, Shelley, for having us and everybody else for organizing everything. It's really fantastic for us to play in this great space and with all this fantastic art, and it just gives it a different vibe, so we're really thrilled always to be here. We've got a really interesting program for you today, and I thought I would say a little bit about each piece, or Paolo and I. Of course, I'm Corey Hamm, co-director with Paolo Bortolussi of Contemporary Players here at UBC. The first piece we're going to play for you, George Crumb Myth. This piece is actually one movement from a very large 40-minute work called Macrocosmos 3, Music for a Summer Evening. And the whole piece, Macrocosmos 3, is actually for 2 pianos and 2 percussion. But we've extracted this one movement called Myth because it doesn't really have to use piano. It only uses the resonance in a particular way of piano. And Myth is a great title for this piece. It's very eerie and it feels very ritualistic. It has a lot of silence. It's quite an amazing piece. So, without further ado, let's bring everybody on.
about this great space for a concert? This is fantastic. In particular, this one, I liked all the other concerts we've done, and we've done shows in here for 3 or 4 years. But having this sort of living, shifting landscape behind us, I think is really cool this time in particular. I really like watching Julia with this sort of kind of ghostly, creepy figure in the boxcar or cavern or warehouse behind her. The next show, the next piece on the show is one of those seminal works of the last 120 years or so. If there was one piece that we picked out as defining sort of an era of music, chances are this piece would have been picked, Pierre Lunaire by Arnold Schoenberg. It was actually written before his sort of famous 12-tone system and music was established by him. He spent sort of 8 silent years developing his new language of music, and this was written just prior to that in 1912. I wrote down a few notes, and I wrote down the poem because there's text involved here, and I'm going to read that to you, but just a few brief things about it. Written in 1912, setting of poems by Albert Giraud, who's a French poet. It was translated then into German, and it was very popular at the time. And it's a cycle of 3 melodramas, 3 times 7 melodramas. So there are 21 poems, and the piece is divided into 3 sections. The piece that we're going to hear today, we're only going to hear one movement, is the last one in the first section. The few cool notes that I was just reading before the show. The premiere of the show was a pretty big deal for him, and the ensemble rehearsed 40 times for the first show, which just, I mean, if they were paying by the hour, I can't imagine how much that would have cost to produce that concert. That kind of thing doesn't happen today very often, I can tell you that. The ensemble itself is flute, clarinet, violin, cello, piano, and voice. And each of these, most of the instruments have doubling parts. The piccolo, there's piccolo part for the flute player, and in particular there's a viola part for the violinist to play as well. And the clarinet plays multiple clarinets, A and B flat. So it's an interesting instrumentation, and that instrumentation became sort of a standard repertoire for the rest of the century as a very sort of useful and flexible ensemble. You'll notice right away that there's a vocalist, a singer here, but she's not exactly singing and she's not exactly talking. It's called Sprechstimme, which is somewhere in between. It's sort of like expressive talking. And the original performer was not a singer by trade. I can't say all of these notes that I made, so I'm just going to cut to the poem, and I'm going to read you the text that you're going to hear performed today. This is called Der kranke Mond, and I'll read it in English because I don't speak German. So the translation is as follows. You ailing, death-awaiting moon, high upon heaven's dusty couch, your glance, so feverish and overlarge, lures me like strange enchanting songs. With unrequited pain of love, you die, your longing deep concealed, you ailing, death-awaiting moon, high upon heaven's dusty couch. The lover, stirred by sharp desire, who reckless seeks for love's embrace, exults in your bright play of light, your pale and pain-begotten flood, you ailing, death-awaiting moon. So it's a fairly cheerful piece. And the whole series, the whole collection of poems and works is this kind of grotesque, clown-like work. So I encourage you to go out and check it out if you haven't heard of the piece or haven't heard it already, and come back to some CP concerts next semester where you hear more of the movements. Before I go, I will mention that next week is the last concert for the Contemporary Players Ensemble, and it's going to be at the School of Music in the Roy Barnett Hall at noon on Friday. So if you're interested in hearing a great collection of pieces written just this past year by UBC composers, please come check it out. So without further ado, I'll welcome Juhi and Hillary to the stage to perform Der kranke Mond.
Du
by Frederic Rzewski, the American composer, who's still living, and he lives in Brussels, Belgium. He wrote this piece. Rzewski, as you may know, is a very political composer. He has written many pieces with such titles, a piece I've been playing a lot of, The People United Will Never Be Defeated, or a piece called Winsboro Cotton Mill Blues about racist oppression in the South. Another piece of his is called The Price of Oil, so you can see the very political titles. This particular piece, however, called Spots, is not that way. It's not politically inspired. He wrote a set of pieces, and they're for variable instruments. What I mean by that is not that every movement is different, but rather you can play it with whatever instruments you want. So we've chosen here vibraphone, violin, electric guitar, and soprano saxophone. But we could just as easily have chosen some other set of instruments to play these pieces. Also, we could have just as easily given the parts to different members of this. In fact, that's an interesting idea. Maybe another part we could try playing the same piece twice, but with different people playing different parts. But we won't do that today. And each of these pieces, we're going to play 5 of the pieces from Spots. Each one of them is very distinct. And clearly, Rzewski took the initiative and treated these pieces. They were as exercises not only for the instruments to try and say, what would be interesting for 4 different people to play? What kind of combinations could I have that don't require the specific characteristics of each of a particular instrument? But also, I'm sure that's an exercise for himself as a composer as well. So he had fun with featuring certain lines within the textures and having ostinati going on in the background. The final piece is the 5th one that we're going to play for you today, is very sparse sort of a work, but there are other ones that are jazzy and sort of funky and kind of fun, and they require a lot of sort of careful ensemble conversations as well. So, here we go with Spots. The next piece we're going to play is by Terry Bosbein. Terry Bosbein is a friend of one of our faculty, our string faculty, Jasper Wood. Jasper Wood and his trio, Triple Forte, have commissioned Terry to write them a piano trio. And so he's in town working with them right now. And Jasper came up with the idea of having Terry, or having us, CP, play a couple of his works. And so we're really happy to be playing a string trio for you today. A Prayer for Peace. This piece is a very beautiful piece with long lyrical lines in all the string parts. Very slow with nice climaxes, and it's sort of more traditional sounding string writing, very beautiful for that. And I think that's all I really need to say. So enjoy.
that's great. So we're going to go from one sort of traditional genre ensemble to another, from the string trio to a string quartet for the last piece on the show. Realized in my sort of nervous speech earlier, I neglected to tell you who I was. So my name is Paolo Bortolussi, and I co-direct the ensemble with Corey, with Corey Hamm. I was thinking about this as I was talking about Rzewski, and that when we're programming for this ensemble, one aspect of what we do is we want to represent living composers, works that were written over the past 25, 30 years, but it'll also give sort of perspective on what's happened in music over the past, say, 100 years. So one interesting part of today's show is that we have this seminal work that really defined music for a whole multiple generations in Rzewski's work. And then we also have these pieces by living composers, one of whom is visiting the campus as we speak this month. Another is the last piece on the show is by a composer who is really one of the, I want to say, bright stars on the world stage, but he's also with a few controversies in his own right. So I'll speak just a little bit about this. So Osvaldo Golijov is an interesting person in that he's Argentinian, born in Argentina, but of a Jewish family that immigrated there between the wars in 1920. His I guess origins from his parents were Russian and Romanian. And so the influences in his music are very culturally based in that you hear influences of Jewish liturgical music, Argentinian tango, as well as a very strong influence of klezmer music. What's often said about him is rather than like a pastiche of styles, as you might get in this century where you have things juxtaposed next to each other, his music is very integrated. All these influences are integrated into one piece together. So within the language, you'll hear tango rhythms mixed with klezmer harmonies and that type of idea. He moved to Israel in 1983, and then following that, some study there, moved to the US, where he really sort of took off. And there comes the controversy. There's no doubt in anyone's mind that his music is unique and interesting and very accessible, but also challenging in some ways. There were a few events, I guess, and I remember these very clearly when I was a grad student in the U.S., that there was this big major name, and suddenly there's these things took place, and everyone's whispering about him. In particular, there was a plagiarism charge that he stole music from another composer, and music critics were flocking and listening to each work after the other, and they decided, yes, basically the same piece with different details here and there. And he defended himself later, saying that he did this on purpose and that he had the permission of the other composer, etc. There's another thing that said that he was awarded a $125,000 grant, basically 2 grants and a co-commission by 35 orchestras. Huge deal, and he produced a work for all these 35 orchestras. There's big fanfare. It ended up being about 9 minutes long, and I guess there was this big sense of, what, really? So there's those events, and yet there's these amazing works like this piece that you're going to hear tonight, which is, I think, is an influential work in the sort of modern string quartet repertoire. It won a Grammy Award in 2002. It's called Yiddishbbuk. We're not going to hear the whole thing today, unfortunately. It's a very big piece, but it's a brilliant work, and I'm excited that our quartet here has taken on this challenge. And I'm not going to say anything more about the piece because you're going to hear it, and it's going to be great. Thank you so much for coming to this concert. I believe that we're going to have another one here next semester, so please look at the calendars and come back for the next show. Come back to the Contemporary Players concerts. Corey, you're approaching like you want to say something else.
Yes, yeah. Maybe we could do our plugs right now.
Let's do our plugs.
One plug, of course, is that next term we have another concert here at the Belkin, which we're thrilled about. The date of that is March 8th, and so please come to that. Another plug, more immediate, if you're interested in contemporary music, I am a piano professor at UBC, and my own class of pianists, they're giving a concert tonight at 7 p.m. in Barnett Hall in the School of Music. free concert, and it's going to be a fantastic concert of contemporary piano music and music for piano from the 20th century, and a couple of pieces for two pianos. It'll be really amazing. So if you're interested, please join us then. That's tonight at 7 p.m. Also tomorrow night at 8 p.m. I'm involved in this other interesting project. We have a concert involving guitar, piano, and erhu, the Chinese instrument erhu. And we've got 4 world premieres tomorrow night. That's at 8 p.m. also in Barnett Hall, the School of Music. And world premieres by Michael Park, a young Vancouver composer, and by John Oliver, a more established composer. And we've got trios for erhu, piano, and guitar, plus all combinations thereof. So that's another concert that might interest you. And next Friday, Paolo, maybe you want to plug that one.
I mentioned it briefly, but there's a composers collective, student composers collective at UBC that approached us, a year and a half ago or so, and said, wouldn't it be a great idea if we all wrote one sort of giant piece collectively, where each composer is taking one movement, they have ideas that sort of permeate the whole piece, there are connecting movements, so it's to be presented as one show, rather than 11, there's 11 composers involved, rather than 11 separate pieces, it's one large piece in 11 parts. We've been working on this all semester. It's a huge 60-minute piece, so it's a big thing to put together with a great ensemble. And we're excited that all the composers have been involved in rehearsals, and they're all going to be at the show. So it's pretty exciting for us to present a whole show of UBC student composers, and really, UBC student composers. I don't want to influence the student part. They're really very professional, well-written, very musical, beautiful works. So please come next week. It's going to be a great show. Great.
Yep.
Thanks.
Tonight and tomorrow and next Friday.